Welcome to RGR Studios, where we read Reddit stories. I'm your host, Ron, joined by my friend.
Nice to meet you guys. I'm Jaden. I'm with Ron doing these Reddit videos. Hope you guys enjoy and giving it back to Ron.
Thank you. We're new to this. Hopefully, we're gonna make it, hopefully, grow big and continue with all this Reddit stuff for this YouTube channel. And we have many projects ahead of us if we can get our feet off of the ground and enjoy this story that's coming up.
r/prorevenge. Asta Cask. I used theatrics despite my bully. He was pretty much dramatic about the whole thing. TLDR at the bottom. Prelude. When I was just a young man, 18, I got a job at a Canadian oil patch. It was my first real job. It was the early 2000s, and this paid $20 an hour. With no experience or education required, minimum wage was sub $6. It called for well testing. Basically, you hook up a closed pressure tank and flare stack to new oil and gas wells. Then you flow them and gather data for the oil barons. It's hard work setting up and tearing down, but the rest is recording gauges and computer work. Not bad for a first job, except for fucking Gary. You work 2 man, 12 hours, or 4 man, 24-hour crews. One laborer and one supervisor a shift. I was paired with a mean spirited alcoholic in his mid 50s named Gary. He was overweight and lazy, only helping with things too heavy for me to lift alone. Like 250-pound pipes, he spent most of the time inside the trailer, for the most part anyway, watching DVDs, napping, hourly typing a bit of data into the PC. He also liked picking on me with jokes, read insults. I'm not a small man. I'm about 6'1" in heels. He was noticeably smaller, yet not physically intimidated. Back then I lacked confidence and had a baby face. I got called stupid a lot. When he found out I never had used a power drill before, he asked me, "Didn't your dad ever teach you anything?" I made the error of telling him my dad was only in my life for a handful of years. The next time I made the mistake, he quipped, "No wonder my dad walked down on me." I did call him out on that, like every other asshole alive. He'd tell me, "Oh, I couldn't take a joke." We always worked far out of town in the countryside. I often had to eat dinner with him in the small town restaurants, mostly bars. If we could help it, he drank a lot. Could actually be personable when not at work. He had at least two deep. He didn't stop and drink every night. He quickly became the case that I drove us to work in a semi truck. He made $1, $1.10 per kilometer, and we could drive 100 to 350 kilometers per day. Every day for weeks. 100 miles, 160 miles, FYI. I got minimum wage for travel time. He was hungover most of the morning. Didn't want to drive and told me he was the boss. He slept like a gin bloated corpse until we got to work. I worked with him for 3 months. 3 months of demeaning treatment and verbal abuse. I didn't react much. It's still true that everyone has the breaking point. I was very used to bullying by then. Long story short, I just get silent. I also needed a job. I don't need anything until I do, and I don't need to do nothing forever. Part 1. The Power of Love. The first step in my quest for vengeance was remembering that it's impossible to defeat an evil with the power of love. Part 2. The Power of Terror. One night while we were out of town on a job, during dinner I mentioned that Gary is pretty lame. He sleeps most of the time while I drive his truck and he gets paid. Maybe he ought to kick me a few bucks for my way for the effort. He didn't like my suggestion. He be generous. The last hinge must have crumbled because he became more unglued. More verbal abuse, and I was young. I actually got reduced to anger tears when he threatened my job. It was a bad feeling, so I resolved to at least get a, get back at him. I'd been taking notes because I wanted to join a different crew anyway. My breaking point was achieved. This was usually when my instinct for self-preservation diminished and the impulses thoughts has fewer safeguards. I wanted to go home, not revenge, but serendipity delivered the next morning. Gary was once again in his travel time coma, and I drove us to work. About 30 kilometers from the side of the highway on a pullout was a semi truck. Luck would also have it, it was running, and the trucker was outside his rig. I quickly formulated a plan. Gary always needed to be woken up with intent, so he didn't stir when I stopped. Got and asked the friendly driver for a favor. Trucker man agreed to my terms, got back in his semi and waited the signal. Gary blissfully sleeping off the last of his nightly whiskey. Also failed to notice that when I maneuvered his truck, parking it, and we were nearly bumper to bumper facing the big, beautiful Peterbilt. I lit the beacon. The truckers of Rahan answered with his own headlights, like the horn and helm hammerbread, sounding in the deep. The trucker hit his air horn with amazing commitment to instill fear. I did my part by honking Gary's truck gleefully. In respite and screamed my ass off, I cried bloody murder at the blast level and yelled, "Fuck! We're gonna die!" Striking like a battalion of bombers singing the chorus of fire. The glorious cacophony lasted less than a minute. When hit him, Gary dented the ceiling. Good thing he's thick as cement, or that might have hurt. He rocketed up with such force because the amount of shit he rapidly expelled into his pants kept him in debt to his own bowels until retirement. The wonderful sound of his anguished howls segued quickly and epoxily enraged. While coming to terms with what I had done, he couldn't correctly choke out his death threats. I reversed, peeled off, before he decided to get out and make good, and gave the tucker a wave. I got about 10 down the road when Gary felt the need to tell me he was dangerously high blood pressure, and I could have killed him with a stroke. About 4 years later, I went to paramedic school, so yes, in hindsight, I agree with this assessment. Sucks for him. At 18, I legitimately no idea what a stroke was. What would I even do? Probably ignore him like they did Stalin. I'd like to think he was just extra hungover or lazier than usual, pretending half his body was paralyzed. Dead. I started laughing and told him he should probably calm down. Then I said, "Can't take a joke?" He kept making incomplete threats, and I just couldn't stop laughing, making it even funnier when he wouldn't shut up. Don't feed it, Gary. I love ugly laughing at angry people like I was a hyena. He was fighting the urge to kill me and the desire to not stroke out simultaneously. The struggle was real. It took about 20 minutes before we got back to the site. That dance continued the whole time. I even asked him if it was normal for his face to be that red. Arriving, he ordered me to get out and said I was fired, then stopped to go call the company owner. Whatever. I had intermittent chuckles and smoked cigarettes while savoring my victory. For 4 hours, it took the company owner to come pick me up. It was a medium-sized business, about 100 employees. He was the GM as well. I got some details. Gary wanted to involve the cops for attempted murder. Boss dissuaded him. Gary told one hell of a tale and left me looking like Satan. So I told him that all necessary for Gary's punishment on the way back to the city. He had a good chuckle about it. He was actually a decent guy. I worked for him until I went back to school. I got moved to a different crew where I could be a lone psychopath. That's about it. I did greet some street cred from it with the rest of the boys at the company. TLDR, I tricked my work bully into thinking he was dying in a motor vehicle collision with a semi truck. So, what do you think about the story, Ron?
I think it was pretty interesting. Honestly, I also work like that. I mean, not as like an oil rigger, but there's sometimes you gotta mess with your coworkers. Honestly, if they're like such a dick, you gotta mess with them. Honestly, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, actually, no, I'm pretty unemployed.
No, but
But
normally,
I get what you mean.
no, yeah, yeah,
With
but
the few jobs
normally,
I have worked at.
yeah, yeah. But normally when I go to work, me and my father, I work with him. Uh, so he always throws around chicken bones at them. We were playing with deer legs, just putting them in people's cars just to mess with them. Cause you gotta have laughs sometimes, even if it makes you think
Oh
that
yeah,
you're
it
a
helps. It
dick,
helps
but you
get through
just
the day.
exactly. Um,
It's just all
but
in good
this
fun.
this guy did deserve it though. To be honest with you, Scaring him
Yeah, no joke.
almost to a heart attack? What?
Yeah, but in OP's defense, he didn't know that at the time, and the guy was being a big dick. Not gonna
Eh,
lie.
yeah, but hopefully that scared him half straight, you know?
Hopefully, and it seems like OP it worked out well for OP. He said he went to nursing school at the end or something like that.
Yeah, but a good thing he
Oh
didn't
no,
have to work
paramedic,
with it. He didn't have to work with anyone after that. He was put in solo.
paramedic. Yeah, at least he got to keep, at least he didn't lose the job, which was nice.
Oh yeah, honestly, HR would have had a field day with that one.
No fucking joke.
well,
Oh man,
well, we
I
should
thought it
get
was a
in.
good story though.
It was a good story, but we should get into our next one.
Yep.
Here, roll the next one. R slash pro revenge. The red avatar. Classmate got pranked by fake letter after screwing us over. Old story. This is a very old revenge from when I was a teenager in the 90s. There were only a few PC gamers around at the time. And without internet, it was hard to get hold of new games. Me and my friend bought games from abroad via airmail because local stores didn't sell many, but these weren't cheap. We'd trade them with each other and would copy the copy protection, which often was included. So this made it semi affordable for us. A new kid joined our class, however, and his uncle had tons and tons of games we didn't have. We offered to trade games with him and gave him our original copies for him to copy and return. We got corrupted floppy. Yes, this was the 90s. Missing copy protection, etc. And after a few months of this, received not a single working game while we had received all our games, the Settlers, Doom 2, Monkey Island game, etc. And some of he returned in less nice condition. We had enough. We had wanted to get revenge, but we didn't know how. Now in the 90s, we're known for many aid campaigns after Freddie Mercury died of AIDS in 1991. I was very a huge fan of Queen, and this new friend would often mock me for liking a gay singer. He would come from a very conservative family, and his mother was quite Catholic, and this gave us an idea. When we had attend an AIDS event organized by a certain foundation with our class, at the end of we were given flyers about AIDS, homosexuality, and etc., and free condoms with logos of the AIDS Foundation were up for grabs. We each grab a few for reasons you will so reach below. Me and my friend were one of the few with computers and inkjet printers at home, so we got this idea to screw him over. We created a fake letter addressed to our friend, pretending we were the AIDS Foundation, copying the logo and everything to make it look authentic as possible. It went something like this: Dear first name, thank you for your letter. We understand it's difficult being open about your homosexuality, and you may have questions after this event you attended with your class. Please find the enclosed a flyer which should answer many of your questions, as well as some condoms. Please practice safe sex at all times. We enclosed the flyer we had gotten from this event as well as the condoms, mailed it to him, Mr. Last Name, to guarantee his father would open the letter first. We had no idea the shitstorm this would create. We knew him being homophobic, this would be a great revenge, but apparently his mother had been in tears, screaming his father angry, and he was grounded for weeks with his parents convinced that he was gay. In the end, he figured out we had something to do with it because we had been carefully fishing to see if our prank had succeeded, but at first he thought the letter was authentic and contacted the foundation in his name. When we finally confessed we had faked it, we had a nice trip to the principal's office to explain why we had done it. With this, his parents present, it's still the best revenge I ever took in my life, even though it was 30 years ago. So, what do you think about that story, huh, Jaden?
Uh, it seemed an all good fun. I really don't see. I hope they didn't get in trouble for that because it wasn't like anything crazy. But I guess maybe back then, whenever the story took place in, maybe it was more big of a deal. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
but a good
Like,
prank
no,
nonetheless.
yeah, exactly. We would most definitely done it to someone that we know if we had the idea, but not to be like saying, "Oh, it's a bad thing." No, just to joke around and just to mess with them. But it's not always okay to out people, you know.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Depending on the situation, it could be like really bad, um,
Yeah,
because like as what the OP said, their parents were conservative. You don't know what they would do to you, and if they're like religiously against the LGBTQ plus for family.
oh yeah, you see it all the time. Some people
Yeah,
even have to cut off some family members because like, so it's really never good to out somebody.
yeah, but the story it sounds somewhat reasonable for them to mess with someone, but I don't know the how the outcome was, but
Yeah,
it was a good prank though, nevertheless.
yeah, and hopefully it all ended okay. Nothing serious happened.
Especially because the story was based on the '90s, not like nowadays.
Yeah. R/Pro Revenge. March competitive 6235. Gas thief revenge. I was told this belonged to you, so I'm reposting. Had a neighbor that would walk in my backyard and take my can of gas for my mower and would put in his car and mower and then return the can. I found this out because I had begun to be a little suspicious that this 5 gallon can of gas can always be nearly empty every time I went to mow my lawn. And it was only like a 1 quart tank for the lawnmower. This was back before the cheap easy security cameras, so I had to set up a webcam for my laptop with motion detecting software. Caught the guy going in my backyard literally 5 minutes after I left the house. For the next week, every time I had to take a piss, I pissed in the can. Now full of piss, it smells enough like gas to fool the idiot. Then I left it at the back patio again. Made a big show of checking the fluids in my car, packing a few bags, and made sure the neighbor knew I was getting ready to go on a trip and I'd be gone for a while, hoping he takes the bait. I came back home in about an hour. Car trouble. The thief was in front of the yard pulling a rope on his lawnmower so hard it looks like he was going to have a stroke, turning bright red and cussing. Later he gets in his car and makes it a couple blocks up the road and suddenly breaks down. I checked the gas can on my patio. It's empty. Also, I wanted to add that this guy was a huge piece of crap. That not only thing he did, I found out he had arrest warrant, so I ended up getting him arrested and applying for a sheriff's ride along the program with his name.